Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bardtender, a show where I'm going to teach you how to make Dungeons & Dragons themed cocktails on our D&D show Growing Campaigns. If you'd like to catch Growing Campaigns, you can Sundays, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. As always, if you're not available on Sundays, you can go to our website, dutchmastergaming.com, to find all the alternative ways you can view our content. For this episode, I'm going to show you how to make our next cocktail, which is the Blood Red Old Fashioned. Now, this would pair perfectly with vampires, but I don't want to give away too many spoilers for our players, so I decided to just briefly go over shadows since they had a nasty encounter with them previously. For old fashions in general, I actually have a ton of different recipes and variants that I use, so look out for posts on our Instagram or maybe even other videos on other old fashions that I use. So this is a very simple, classic recipe for an old fashioned. Really the only thing I did differently was give it a thematic flair by using maraschino cherry juice instead of simple syrup to give it a reddish color that fits the dark theme of Season 1 Growing Campaigns. Again, very simple recipe. In front of me I just have a mixing glass, which I will add 2 ounces of bourbon to. And depending on which bourbon you use will kind of change how much simple syrup you should use. Currently I have a Maker's Mark, which already has vanilla notes, so I'm just going to use maybe a little more than a bar spoon full of this maraschino cherry juice. Again, just to give it that red color. And then to top off our cocktail, I'm just going to give it 3 or 4 splashes of Angostura bitters here. Oops. And then I guess to save sound quality, I don't have ice in my mixer, but I'm going to go ahead and put a bourbon rock in here. I'm going to stir it and then transfer it to my rocks glass on bourbon ice, which you'll see the final product here in just a moment. And then I will finish it with a garnish. I'll show you the garnish because I like to flame an orange peel and add a maraschino cherry. Or if you don't feel like going through that effort, you can just put a orange slice and a maraschino cherry as your garnish. I like to give you different options when I show you how to make cocktails because personally, I like to make my cocktails in several different ways. So after stirring and transferring, we have our Blood Red Old Fashioned. And as I mentioned, I like to use a maraschino cherry or an orange wedge. Or you can also fire an orange wedge, which is kind of a fun and fancy technique. Really all you're doing is you're adding the orange oils to your cocktail. And by adding by squirting it through a flame, you add a little bit of a smoky flavor. So I'll go ahead and actually just coat the rim with the leftover oils and place it right in my drink. It's, some people say like side-by-side testing, you can really tell a difference between doing this and not. Haven't tried it myself. Maybe I will and let you know if I can figure it out. But either way, it looks cool and it smells really nice when you do it. So, and then, yeah, I just add a cherry on top, and our drink is now complete. With that, now you can sit back, relax, and enjoy while I tell you a brief overview of shadows. The challenges with using shadows is they have a low health pool and low intelligence, so this kind of limits your strategies. Luckily in the book, they give you a bit of a guide on how to appropriately use your shadows. So shadows are monsters that want to feed off the strength of any foe, but they actually like to weaken and destroy those with particularly good hearts more so than not.
Look out! Shadows at 4 o'clock, Tenderheart!
So, though they're monsters that want to survive, this is not their end-all be-all strategy, but it is a good guide to help you determine who your shadows are going to go after and kind of how to position them. Another thing is, shadows have a lot of damage resistances. So if some of the players get through those resistances, maybe the shadows will shy away from them and start feeding on some of the weaker foes that can't destroy them as quickly. And the final tidbit of strategy they use is they tend to stick to the shadows and try to hide, maybe waiting a few turns to find a way to get the upper hand on the players and disrupt their strategy. Now, these are all just general guidelines, so feel free to improv or completely change an encounter as you see fit. A good example of this is the shadows were supposed to come out in Death House in our campaign, and it didn't make very much sense for that to happen at the time. So I just took the shadows with the party and I unleashed them later when it made more sense. So when you're planning encounters, don't be afraid to just completely change them. What's important is that it makes sense for your situation and your current story. And all these guides, same thing. Everything that I mentioned, they're just unique things that I try. It's nothing that you have to follow. Hopefully, it gives you a few ideas for your own campaign, but that's all I'm shooting for here. Show you how to make some cocktails and maybe give you some fresh ideas with some monsters. So with that, we can wrap up another episode of Bardtender. So I'd like to thank all of you for coming by and learning how to make a new cocktail with me. As always, if you have any suggestions, maybe a cocktail or a specific monster you'd like to see my take on, leave your suggestions in the comments below. And you can always, as always, look forward to a new episode next month. So I'll see you then. Cheers.
My name's Jeffrey.
Glad to know you, Jeffrey.